Greetings! This is a network cable tester. Cheapest chips on eBay. Unfortunately, it's fried. So's this one. This one's not. Well, not yet. I'm not sure what's fried them yet. Network switches capable of delivering power over Ethernet deliver 48 volts or more, but they disconnect that power very quickly when it's not required, even quicker in some cases than the indicator lights suggest. Watch the meter, watch the light. As you can see, some switches may have a few volts across the pairs even when PoE isn't present, but in this case the current is negligible. As you can see, plugging a device in or a tester is enough on its own to drag it down to 0 volts. The testers don't seem to be triggering PoE delivery by the switches, not the faulty ones at least, so at the moment I'm not sure what's fried them. I don't want to try with the one working unit yet, as I want to be able to compare the units, but we'll come back to that later. Here's how they're supposed to work. With a cable connected between the emitter and the receiver, and this in test mode, it will cycle through all 8 pins and ground and will show the corresponding pin it's connected to over on the other side. So you can tell whether a cable is straight through or roll over or cross over or has missing or shorted pairs. The other thing you can use it for is as a wire tracer. With it in scan mode, you can use the receiver to pick up the test tone on the signal to identify a cable in a whole bunch of cables. There are 2 more tests this unit can do, according to the instructions. One is a polarity and voltage tester, triggered by pressing the unlabeled buttons for 2 seconds whilst in scan mode. This uses 2 crocodile clips attached to an RJ11 connection, which internally map to pins 1 and 8 on there, and they will show then the status of red if the red one is positive, or green if the red one is negative. The other is a continuity test, which is done by putting it in test mode rather than scan mode, and again 2 seconds. This uses the same crocodile clips, and if there's continuity, number 1 lights. Basically all it's doing here is it's doing the same as the normal test function, it's just it's frozen at position number 1 instead of cycling through. Anyway, that's how they're supposed to work. As you can hear, the tone generator is still functioning, although this one does seem to start flashing its verify light. That may be acting as a low battery warning. In cable test mode, something's definitely not right. So what's up? Well, let's crack the lids off and see what's inside. Here are the insides. As you can see, the receiver is in 2 parts, with the LED wire mapping block on a completely separate PCB with no connection whatsoever to the battery. It's completely passive. There are 2 ICs on the receiver and 4 on the transmitter, one of which has no markings whatsoever. To make it easier to figure out how on earth this works, I've traced out the schematic, and looking at the way the blank chip is wired, I suspect it's a PIC 16F84. Anyway, here's the schematic for the receiver. It's only got partial information, as the only way to accurately read the capacitor values would be to desolder them, and I'm not that interested in the schematic. As you can see, it's basically a 3-stage amplifier with a FET feeding an LM386 power amplifier, which feeds another LM386, which feeds a built-in speaker or a earpiece. The wire mapping board has just 9 LEDs, each with a 470 ohm resistor in parallel, and all the cathode ends all joined together. I'll explain that in a moment. Right, here's the emitter board schematic, and I've added the receiver board as well, just to make it easier to figure out what's going on. Effectively, you've got 4 test circuits in one. You've got a wire mapper, a tone generator, a voltage checker, and a continuity tester. First, let's look at how the wire mapper operates. This uses 3 feeds from the PIC, one RB5 is brought high in order to shut down a pair of 4066 analog switches. RB4 is used to reset a 4017 decade counter, and RB3 is used to pulse the counter's clock input about once every half second. So let's assume that there's a straight through cable connected and trace one step of the wire map, in this case for pin 1. With pin 1 high, power flows through LED 1 and a 470 ohm resistor in parallel with it, then through a 200 ohm resistor. At the other end of the cable it flows through LED 1, again with a 470 in parallel, then back through the other 8 470 ohm resistors, all in parallel, effectively about a 59 ohm resistor if you've got a shielded 4-pair cable, or 67 ohm for unshielded, 157 ohms if it's unshielded but there's only 2 pairs, or 470 ohms if it's just a single pair cable and there's only the 1 wire remaining. Anyway, back along the rest of the cable. At the other end, again, there are up to 8 200 ohm resistors in parallel, so anything from 25 to 200 ohms, depending on how many wires. Then up to 8 470 ohm resistors, again, so between 59 and 470, and down to ground through up to 8 low outputs on the counter. A pulse to the count input switches to the LED for pin 2 and the process repeats. Looks complicated, but when you trace it out like this, you can see it's actually really simple. For the tone generator, firstly the PIC needs to hold RB4 high in order to hold the counter in a reset state. This will make it switch to output Q0 and stay there, which isn't used, therefore turning off all the LEDs. The reason it needs to hold it there and can't just pulse it as a one-off is that RBC, the counting pulse, is now used to send the test tone via a transistor to a pair of MOSFETs. That pair of MOSFETs provides one leg of a differential signal. With their own output brought up to the 9-volt battery supply, the output of a second pair is then driven to ground. With the first pair to ground, the second pair goes up to the battery supply. These two opposing tone signals go to a pair of 4066 quad analog switches. One signal goes to one chip for pins 4, 5, 7 and 8, the other chip does 1, 2, 3 and 6. PIC pin RB5 is then high to activate all 8 analog switches and bring those test tones onto the 4 pairs, 2 opposing the other 2, or differentially into 3 twisted pairs of a cable plugged into the RJ11 port instead. We can use an oscilloscope to visualise these tones. These are the 2 separate outputs. As you can see, they are one opposing the other. Each is about 6 or 7 volts. And they're 50% duty cycle, and it's varying between 700 Hz and 1.4 kHz. It's pulsing between the two. Something to bear in mind here, which could be something of a design fault, is that the test tone voltage isn't just going to the output sockets. It's also being driven via the resistors and the 180 ohm internal resistance of the 4066 straight into the 4017 counter, which in tone mode is grounding all of its LED connections. It doesn't have tri-state outputs, so the reset signal is holding them low, not holding them in a high impedance state. That 6 volts or so through each effectively 850 ohm resistance is going to be putting pulses of current way over what's listed as a maximum in the chip's datasheet. As far as I can see, the correct way to design this circuit would be to replace the 8 200 ohm resistors with another pair of 4066 analog switch chips on the output of the counter or on the output of the LEDs, transistor switched in the opposite way to the first two. That would mean that the RJ11 and the RJ45 test connectors are either connected to the counter or to the toner, never to both. It looks to me like someone's left a bit of the circuit out to save a few bob, sacrificing battery life and stressing the counter chip in the process. And the same goes for the polarity and voltage check. Whatever the voltage comes in, you don't particularly want it being driven, albeit via the resistors, straight into a 4017 that's trying to ground it out. Anyway, that's the way it should work. Something's obviously gone wrong, but what? One of the faulty ones belongs to a colleague who said it's been getting hot and eating through batteries, although given that the tone dumps into the counter chip that way, that's not surprising. Let's take a look at all 3 running with a thermal camera. Something worth looking at here before I move on is this is the working unit in scan mode. This is one of the defective ones, and as you can see, something is pulling one of the outputs relatively high. It can't pull low enough, it's not pulling all the way down to ground. And this is the other one. Same thing again, but on the other output. Okay, let's test these first of all in test mode. which is for cable mapping, the actual sweep through, and see what happens. It looks like we've got a transistor heating up, and the 4017 counter on this one, and to a lesser extent one of the switching chips. This one we definitely have a problem with one of the switching chips, and the other fault is in a transistor here, or one of the MOSFETs actually I should say. We'll let those cool down and try them then in scan mode, which is the tone detection mode. Okay, those are cooled down. Let's try them in tone generating mode, which is scan mode. Straight away they are heating up again in much the same way. Got a hotspot here, obviously that chip. Over here we have another hotspot in the same location roughly, and with the other chip. Let's do a quick power consumption test with these. This is the faulty one, which is mine, the one which is on the left, and in scan mode you can see it's drawing 360 milliamps, and in test mode it's drawing over half an amp. Let's turn that back off. The known working one in test mode, 8 milliamps with nothing, with no continuity check on there. If I put a cable on to test that, and you can see it drops slightly when it's testing the shield because there's no shield connection. So it's 16 milliamps if it's lighting the LEDs, or 8 without. In cable tracing mode, that's pulling about 40 milliamps, all of which is basically getting dumped into the counter. Finally, we'll test my colleague's one. This is in cable test mode, 170 milliamps nearly, and in tone generator mode about 200 milliamps. So clearly a different fault. But what's happened? I know this one has never been tested with telecom voltage. That one may have done. But let's see if these chips, which we know are getting hot, let's see what happens if I remove them. If I take those completely out of circuit, does that fix the problem with the cable tester? Can it test cables once more for continuity at least? Okay, the 4066 analog switching chips have been removed, so the tone generator circuit is completely isolated from the cable and from the rest of the circuit. Has that fixed mine? Can mine now do a wire map? Yes, it can. The counter chip is intact, and power consumption of this now has actually dropped down to that of the known working one. How about this one? This is my colleague's one. No. Wire mapper is still dead on this one. Also, the power consumption is much higher. You can see it's drawing about 50 milliamps there, and even if on scan mode it's drawing 28 milliamps, even though it's not actually putting that signal out anywhere. So I think I need to remove the 4017 counter chip from this, because we know that is dead, and try and find two working 4066s out of here and see if we can get the tone generator working, at least. This is the one which was working with low power consumption with a counter chip. I've actually removed the counter chip to use on the other one instead, and I've fitted a pair of what I thought were good switching chips, And as you can see, not only is it operating, it's drawing less current than before. It's about 10 milliamps on the scanning mode, and it is actually stronger than ever. It's putting out pretty much full battery voltage now. This one, I had a slight mishap when trying to reflow the solder on the chip, so it does have a melted case, but it also has a working wire tester. Current consumption is still relatively high on this one. Higher than it should be, so I suspect there's still an issue with those FETs. So I'll just go ahead and take those out of circuit. That's more like it. Q3 to Q8 removed. There's two transistors, one to control the MOSFETs, one to control the switching chips, and the four MOSFETs themselves, and you can see the power consumption is back down now to normal. So that's both of them half fixed, but I still don't know what actually broke them. Now, I do have a suspicion, and I might have fried one of these by plugging it into something I shouldn't have. Now remember, there are resistors in here. If I plug it into a network switch, it's not going to have that resistance. So let's see what happens to the power consumption. I'm not going to plug into port 3 on this because I know port 3 is dead. So let's see what happens when I plug it into port 4. It's not too bad. And the switch isn't trying to throw PoE at it. How about the tone generator? What will that have done? Can a working tone generator trigger PoE? No, but it can draw a lot of power. And it's staying there. And it's starting to smoke. There we go. So it would seem that the tone generator is very fussy about what it connects into. It can test into an open cable, but it can't test into anything that might have a network switch plugged into the back end of it. As you can see, it'll burn itself out very quickly. So that's what's probably happened to mine. I probably accidentally selected scan mode instead of test mode, thinking that you're, well, scanning through the connections, and probably smoked out the FETs that way. What I think they should have done there is use those inputs on RA3 and RA4 to detect that there's something not right with the connection, that it is being shorted and it's got a low voltage, and then just vary the duty cycle of RB5 to just pulse the tones until it actually, until the signal, until everything gets back to normal. So it looks like they've messed up there as well. It's a shame really, because for the sake of 40 pence worth of components and a tweak to the code, they could have made a half decent tester. Anyway, I hope someone finds this useful and spends their money elsewhere. Thanks for watching.